lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
A half-second lead. Oh, with a simmering car in the background.
He has it. Oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive, massive accident.
Next to the inside, what a move, what a move.
A very good evening to you all, wherever you happen to be tuning in and whenever you happen to be tuning in, whether you're watching this back later or live. Welcome to Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia. It's for round 5 of the AMS Oz GT3 World Challenge Series. We're going to be marking the halfway point in the series when we get to the halfway point of tonight's race. We'll be 5 out of 9 races in the series, and we are on the second leg of our 3-round Asia Pacific venture. So the last time we bring you a broadcast, we were at Suzuka, which was won by Lewis Wedding in epic circumstances, which we'll get to in just a moment. My name is Nether, heading up the Apex Rear Wing TV commentary team, and it's normally about this time I would introduce my co-commentator, Bagsy, but unfortunately a late decision to withdraw from tonight's proceedings. He's got some real life commitments that he's been unable to get out of. But we all have those from time to time, so this is going to be predominantly a solo effort from the box from myself tonight, but filling in admirably in the pit lane and doing the roving reporter's role as he's done in the past is going to be Benjamin Rhodes. G'day, Ben.
Hey Nether, how are you?
Good. You've been down to see the supercars at Phillip Island today, and you've managed to get yourself back in a position to give me a bit of a hand, so much appreciated.
Oh, that's all right, no problem. I was just thinking, I've gone from one of the fastest tracks in Australia to going to what is a more balanced track. This one, you got a couple of high-speed straights, plenty of high-speed corners, but some good twisty sections as well that keep you alive.
Certainly do. We'll have a look at the circuit in a moment, but for the moment, here is the GT calendar. So as you pointed out, we are at a very, very free-flowing circuit. There it is, 5th on the list there. So running down in order, so Barcelona was won by Lewis Wedding. Down to Monza, which was run by Greg Nangle in a one-lap sprint finish, which was a brilliant finish. Greg Nangle was most happy that he got the win there. And then the Circuit de la Sarthe Le Mans, which was won by Brendan Ross in his Mercedes, and then Lewis Wedding getting the chocolates last time out at Suzuka in an epic finish, actually. The last lap pass at the chicane on Greg Turra, literally picking his back pocket. Wedding would have said he timed his run to perfection, but we look at the former, not the latter. And then here we are at Sepang with only Abu Dhabi left on our Asia Pacific leg coming up in approximately 2 weeks, that 2-hour event. Driver points? Well, we've got a tie at the top. Lewis Wedding and Brendan Ross on 63 points apiece, but Brendan Ross second on that list by virtue of the fact that Lewis Wedding has 2 wins on the season to 1. Brenton Foley, the reigning champ in GT, carryover champion GT class from the WEX series last year, hasn't got a win to his name yet, but he's still well and truly in the hunt. 56 points, he's only 7 points adrift there. Greg Nangle's 4th place there on the list by virtue of his good results, and the rest of the crew following down there. A couple of notable absentees tonight. We haven't seen Brock Harvey or Heath Dixon out there on track, and neither Phil Boak. So those guys are a little bit questionable to see if they can get themselves into the server for tonight's proceedings. Well, you alluded to it before, Ben. The Sepang International Circuit is a rather twisty circuit, so 5.5 Ks in length, got 15 turns, quite the number of tricky corners in this circuit as well. The unique turn 1 and 2 complex just off the start behind the start-finish straight, and the second to last corner, turn 14. A number of the drivers already reporting that they are struggling to get the power down and get the line right for that run to the final corner on the second of what we deem to be the back straight, which is very, very difficult and very, very challenging. We'll bring you some on board a bit later on to see how some of the drivers will tackle that. Roughly 43 to 46 laps we expect we'll get based on the times that we're seeing in pit stops with the 90 minutes ahead of us. And the 4th consecutive circuit that we have that runs in a clockwise direction, fifth circuit we have that runs in a clockwise direction. The first anti-clockwise circuit is actually in 2 weeks from now, which will be the circuit in Abu Dhabi to finish off our Asia Pacific leg. So, Ben, you more synonymous this circuit with Formula One, which has finished up running at this circuit back in 2017. Still hosts the MotoGP. A personal favourite from a number of the drivers in the Formula One world, but it definitely presents a unique challenge, as do all the Hermann Tilke circuits that have been designed.
They do, yeah. Hermann Tilke has a way of doing things that, the different tracks to work with than some of the more naturally designed free-flowing circuits. They all bring an element of challenge in a different way. Yeah, my extent of knowledge with Sepang has been F1. Things like, I forget the driver, but the Red Bull Formula One car under brakes in turn one and both wheels just pop off like a cartoon. And Multi-21 with Vettel and Webber a couple of years back. But it's a great circuit. This first turn is going to be. I love to go on about first turns in motorsport, especially off the line. And this first turn is going to be an absolute doozy with 2 or 3 cars wide.
Yeah, certainly will. It is very wide, this circuit, on the 2 straights. So the straights between the last turn 1, and the turn 14 and turn 15 section straight as well is very, very wide. So plenty of opportunity to fan out and make your pass, and also an interesting lead off into the pit entrance off the final turn as well. So you've got to be very careful. The drivers some will look to take to the pit lane there, and some of them may opt to try and use the racing line a bit more too, so they have to be very careful on pit entry. So we'll go now to the race telecast just to see how things are going, and we're about to pick up qualifying for tonight's race, 15 minutes ahead of us, and the man who topped the timesheets in practice was actually Greg Tara in his Mercedes AMG, and just pipping Ozrob and Will Devenish, those guys all within about a half a second of each other. And Greg Tara is going to have a point to prove. As we said, he had his pocket picked by Lewis Wedding in that final lap at Suzuka 2 weeks ago. And as the cars get rolling for qualifying, we're going to pick up. It looks like Matt Williams is the first man out of the lane. All the FCR cars out. There's Brenton Foley, Greg Tara behind, and Brendan Ross just exiting the pit garage as well. Let's see if we can pick up Matt Williams, and indeed it is Matt Williams who is the first man out on circuit, and he's rounding turn 3 and heading down to turn 4 at the moment. And there in the background from him is the other Mercedes SLS AMG of Greg Nangle. So fair to say Matt Williams hasn't had it all his own way in GT3 competition. He's been in position. He was in position where he would have definitely gone ahead and probably challenged for the win at Monza, if not being disconnected with in the very early stages of that race, because he was on the pole for that race and had a very, very fast car indeed. So he's not the only man out there looking for redemption for his points tally at the moment. Brendan Foley also without a win to his name, and he's someone that is a perennial point scorer but hasn't troubled the win column very, very much in GT3 this season.
Yeah, it seems in general a lot of things that I've discussed actually the concept of being a defending champion with Brenton Foley, and part of it seems to be a perceived moz, whether it actually is a actual moz or whether it's just a case of feeling like there's a moz from running the number 1 or just being the preceding season's champion, that's putting him off the ability to pull off back-to-back. He has done it, as he did, it was Monday night, he pulled off a back-to-back, but there are series that he's running where he was the previous series champion. He is a little worried. Another thing that's been a big worry for him recently is his internet dramas.
Absolutely. Hopefully he's got all those sorted. He has resorted to using his phone, so now we'll stay here with Matt Williams on the clock as he rounds turns 1 and 2, and then turn 1 the right-hander, turn 2 nice and tight, dives downhill a little bit, and then through turn 3 still running downhill. And the elevation change in this circuit is an interesting feature as well. So Matt Williams now down to the first sector split and a 30.4 for his first sector. Through the right-hander, now move the carring over to the right and swing it through turn 5, and then the change of direction for turn 6 comes almost immediately to the right, using all the exit curb nicely. Now this double right-hander at 7 and 8. You can see from the markings on the circuit where the correct racing line happens to be, where all the rubber is. And now a hard stop for the tight hairpin and going uphill at turn 9. And again, almost another immediate change of direction for turn 10. And then another tricky braking and turning zone here at turn number 11. And the circuit proceeds to go downhill again. Swing it left through turn 12. Again, change of direction quickly at turn 13. And then braking, turning. This is the one they've all been having trouble with. Turn 14. Very, very tricky to get the right braking balance and your apex right, and need to use all the exit curb to maximise your speed down this straight. We've seen I think it was Vitaly Petrov in the Lotus go off at that turn in the Formula 1 days. And then braking for turn 15, the final turn. You can see there just the entrance to the pits behind, so you can carry a bit more speed through to the pit entrance if you are going there. And Matt Williams sets a 159.852 for the rest of the field to chase. Greg Nangle immediately surpasses that, goes with the 59.338. Foley surpasses that. We're now very, very close to 58, so 59.077 for Foley. So the Bentley on pole at the moment, or provisional pole. Jamie Snow pops up P4. And Greg Turra goes into P5. Brendan Ross now goes into first man under the 59s, a 58.999. So time's coming thick and fast. And Will Devonish now pops up the Lamborghini into P4, a half a second off Brendan Ross's pace. Brian Walsh coming down the back straight, the lights ablaze, pursued by his teammate. So Brian Walsh making his first, also actually his teammate's ahead, sorry. So it will be Glenn Miles to post a time before his teammate does. Brian Walsh making his first appearance in GT competition this series. They come to the line, Walsh set to 2:04.8, and Glenn Miles a further second back of that. With only 2 drivers remaining to set their first times, Ozrob, he was up there in practice as well, and he sets at 59.4, so good enough for 4th at the moment. And Lewis Wedding, where's he on track? So he's actually on an out lap.
He is on an out lap, yeah. He was sitting in the pit lane for that the first 5 minutes of that session, so I believe he was waiting probably for more rubber to be laid down by the preceding drivers.
Yeah, it looks like you're absolutely right. Then he could be potentially going for a multi-lap run. And Brock Harvey is cursing, I think, at the moment. He's forgotten about GT3 competition and wondering if he's going to be making it for tonight's race. That's what happens when you have children and it's school holidays.
It is, yeah. Not talking from experience there, but yes, school holidays do play a bit of havoc. So all of a sudden, it's not a school night, and you can't just get the kids out of the way by sort of race start time. You've got to potentially entertain them a little longer, and then of course, yeah, you do forget that the racing is on. But fingers crossed that if he doesn't make quali, hopefully Brock can make it to the race, and you can actually you don't need to qualify well in endurance racing to have a strong result.
No, you certainly don't. Well, Brendan Foley had pipped Brendan Ross for provisional pole, but now he's been re-surpassed by Brendan Ross, who's lowered the benchmark again. So Foley and Ross going toe-to-toe at the moment at the top of the standings, and just lowering the benchmark ever so slightly in ever so small increments. We're still in the 58.9s, but now we've got 2 drivers in the 58.9s, and Brock unfortunately is not going to make it for tonight's race. So it looks like we're going to have 11 runners. It's still a reasonable turnout. You've seen the lines that Brendan Ross is taking here and using way, or a lot of curb and some. And actually well off track there as well, carrying a lot of speed and using a lot of the road and the AstroTurf. Probably going to throw that lap away. Let's even pick up Lewis Wedding. He's set a time that's fractionally quicker than Brendan Ross through the first sector at the moment. And that's a very, very good time. Not as good as Foley's first sector. So Foley's best first sector is a 29.9. Lewis a 30.09. And the moment checking, until that moment, he was tracking quite nicely to be up there on the front row. Has he paid the price for using too much of the curb and the grass? It looks like he has, because I think looks like he's rolled out of this. Yeah, well and truly rolled out of it. So he's just going to prepare himself for another flying lap, I think, here, Lewis, because he's well down on pace. Meanwhile, no one else really setting the timing screens alight at the moment. Brendan Ross has decided he's had enough for a little bit. He's in the pit lane. Up until Lewis's moment, he was setting the timing screens alight, but unfortunately for him, this lap doesn't look like it's going to count. He's well off the pace, and he's going to fire himself up here and have another go. Let's see if we can pick up. Who are we going to pick up? Let's see if we can pick up Rob, because he was having a fairly good run through the practice session. He was up there in the top 4. Brendan Ross wasn't a man we expected would possibly be up there for pole. Had a bit of a quiet practice session. But BMW, one of the manufacturers yet to take a win, and lowers his PB there, Rob, but not by very much. Still almost half a second adrift. And Will Deave. Everyone's seeming to find little improvements, just very, very slight improvements. There's not really much time being gained out there at the moment. Every improvement being made is less than 1/10 of a second.
I just want to jump in and there is some improvements happening. Lewis Wedding's just at 29.9 in the first. Sorry, 29.8
actually. So
that's 2/10, I think, on the best.
That is the quickest sector one time we have seen. We'll keep an eye on that with interest as we watch Tara come to the line. He's pursued by Brendan Ross, and looks like Greg Nangle back there. Well, Matt Williams, sorry, is back there. So Greg Nangle, and then Brendan Ross, and then Matt Williams, all in a line. Where's Lewis Wedding? Let's even pick him up. So he's coming up to turn number 12, I think. Sorry, that's turn 11. And we have a second sector split any moment now. And that's an awesome split. Look at that. 0.3 of a second for Lewis Wedding. This is on par to be a mega lap and get down into around about a 58.6. And that looked very, very tidy through turn 14 as well. And now has the McLaren got some good straight line pace?
You'd hope so with this last sector mostly being a lot of straights. That second sector time was not the fastest we've seen, but it was the fastest we've seen recently. That up until Brenton Foley's just under 54 in that second
He's a
sector.
bit wide, a little bit wide there at the last turn. I think he carried a bit too much speed, but now you need to straighten the car and keep it as straight as you can toward the line. And he does a 58.760 for Lewis Wedding. So he lost a little bit of time in that last corner, but good enough to go onto pole position provisionally for the moment. Tara having a very scruffy lap, so he's going again. Glenn Miles behind him. So we've got 3.5 or just over 3.5 minutes here for a flurry. And we're looking at Brendan Ross. It looks like he was on a quick lap until that moment.
Oh.
Foley to the top. Foley goes to the 58.64. Finds another 10th. That was all in that last sector he pulled that off, because he was line ball with Lewis Wedding until the end there. So all in that last sector, that extra mumbo pound that Bentley got him there. Absolutely. His best sector time there was the middle sector, purple in the middle sector of 50.4. And Miles finding some time. Matt Williams is going to have to get a wriggle on if he wants to get another lap in. Jamie Snow down this back straight. Very, very tight between the top three. The top three separated by 0.3 at the moment. Snow going to fire up the SLS, or the AMG, sorry, and have another go. He'll get 2 more laps at that pace, so will Rob. And I think it was Brendan Ross will get another 2 if he can get around quickly enough. And then anybody else now that's out there on the circuit will not get any more. So Nangle's in the pit lane, and so too is Greg Turra. So those two gentlemen don't look like they're going to get any more laps because they need to be on the circuit right now if they'd have any hope of setting a better time. Yep, Nangle and actually Turra is on the circuit. For some reason our live timing has frozen here. And it's Brian Walsh is now in the pit, so he's done for this session. He'll be the next man to cross the line. So looking at for Glenn Miles, he'll get another one more lap. Improves his time. Still a long way from that. Will Devonish the next man to start a lap. So this is his last flying lap on the clock. Wedding is going to get one more flying lap. He's on the back straight now. And behind him,
Ross had a purple first sector 29.823.
He certainly did. And he's pressing on at the moment, Brendan Ross. Next men that are coming to the line or around turn 14. We've got Ozrob, we've got Foley and Jamie Snow. Ozrob down to the final corner. Still time for him to get one more lap in there. Drove it in hard. Beautiful line. Gets a really, really good exit actually. And he lowers his time again, but not by very much. Foley on the clock. Where's Brendan Ross?
Coming out of the last corner now.
Out of the last corner now. Purple in the first sector. Was okay in the second sector. Still got time for one more lap. Lost out. Lost out, but not by very much. And Turra behind him will get one more lap as well. Matt Williams coming to the line. He's going to have about 14 seconds or so on the clock when he starts this lap. So hopefully he gets around before the session ends. Right. No more drivers will start any more laps. Fifth man, Will Devonish, flying through the first two sectors. Gone purple. He's purple through the second sector, 50.2. His first sector was a 30.0. Second sector, 50.2. What can he do? Just ahead of him is Glenn Miles, so he won't be in a position where he's going to trouble him here. But we'll keep an eye out if Glenn Miles can improve his time. It looks like he might improve his time at this rate. And he does. That's a nice improvement. Will Devonish to the line, and he goes pole by 2.5 tenths. Great job from the Lamborghini driver. Catch me if you can, he says. Now, who's the next man around? It's going to be Lewis Wedding. Foley looks like, Foley's done. So Foley's not going to, cannot improve. Wedding can. 30.0 in the first sector, 50.1 in the middle sector, and he's gone wide off the apex and off the racing line at turn number 15. So probably not going to improve his time unless he's had a mega final sector. He has! Where did he pull that from? Drove it in hard. He's now on the front row. What a lap that was. It looked like he was...
no idea where that one came from.
He looked like he lost it out. Ozrob's in the pit lane. Turra will be the next man across the line. But Lewis Wedding, take a bow. He's found some time in that last sector. Must have got the run off at turn 14 absolutely perfect. And he was off the racing line at turn number 15. And we thought surely he's thrown it away because his sectors weren't purple. But he's managed to find a great last sector and managed to put it on pole. Turra stays 7th. And Matt Williams, the only man left who can improve his time. And it doesn't look like this will be an improvement. Only improves by 1 spot. Well, well, well. The last race winner, Lewis Wedding, is the man to catch at the moment. And look at the difference in times. 0.052 of a second to Devonish. That is a very, very tight front row with Brendan Ross and... Brenton Foley and Brendan Ross sharing row number 2. And Greg Nangle not far away either. And now have a look at Ozrob and Turra. They're very, very close as well. Not split by very much, but there's some 1 second off the pace of the drivers at the head of the field. Wow, not a bad session, that one. It was very, very close at the end of the day. But the man who has had plenty of what they call binary seasons with wins or do not finishes, Lewis Wedding, he's done it again, Ben. He always seems to find a way to the front. Doesn't matter whether it's a win, or racing for a win, or racing for a pole position. He pulled it out when it mattered, and he pulled it out right at the death.
Exactly. Yeah, we got no idea where that time came from because he wasn't probably on the time screen at all. So whether it was something with the timing or he just literally pulled that out of nowhere, that was a great lap from Lewis at the end, though, right when he needed it. Yeah, put him on pole quite comfortably by just not far off a tenth of a second. And yeah, it's interesting that Mercedes make up nearly half of this field, and the highest they could get was fourth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we got 5 Mercedes cars in the field. There's 3 AMGs and 2 SLSs, and you're right. The best of the Mercedes crew is Brennan Ross for FCR, followed by Nangle, and then in 5th. Then the next man is Tara in 7th, Matt Williams in 8th, and Snow in 9th. So, and you're right. The Mercedes cars have got a bit of mumbo, but they've only got 1 victory to their name on the season so far, and 1 near victory last time out at Suzuka. With Tara saying that the flow of Suzuka suited his driving style enormously, but he was at the top of the timesheets in practice, and obviously when it gets to qualifying, it's probably not his strong suit. But wait to see if the race pans out the way he was hoping for.
Yeah, this is the difference with qualifying. It's in theory the same as a practice session, but the fact you're on a clock and it doesn't even you don't even have to act like it. You don't even have to actually physically be pressured on a clock. It just having the clock there adds extra pressure, and it's for some drivers it can potentially be what pushes them past the point of concentration and actually starts creeping little errors, and that's why some drivers in practice can't pull the same sort of pace out in a qualifying session.
Absolutely right. Well, we'll take a short break, and we'll dive off and have a listen to what the drivers are saying in the briefing, and we'll be back very, very shortly. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching the AMS Oz GT3 World Challenge Series, round number 5 from the Sepang International Circuit at Malaysia. We've just taken a short break to duck off and have a listen to the driver's briefing being conducted by Lewis Wedding. A couple of points of interest have been raised, one of which is just the safety car, and where it will peel off into the pits at the beginning of the race, and that the green flag will drop rather early. So the drivers just need to be aware that they need to lay off the safety car and give it a little bit of room. A few things that have popped in recent weeks were just being reinforced, such as the pit blend line, making sure that the drivers obey that. You can actually see it there on the broadcast, just as at the pit exit, to make sure they stay to the right of that line and they don't cross. We'd also seen in the pits at Suzuka the last time around that there was some drag racing in the pit lane, effectively at the pit lane speed limit, but just reinforcing that the driver in the fast lane always has the right of way to avoid that, and also a reminder to drivers that moving under brakes is not tolerated, and that's started creeping back in again, so they need to just pay attention when they're in the braking zones. To make sure they're not moving over or moving around under brakes to impede or inevitably cause a collision with another driver. So all fair, just some general racecraft heads up. On the whole, most of the drivers are pretty good, and it's just a clarification of one or two minor incidents just to make sure they don't get out of hand, Ben.
Yeah, it's all of that really is just to avoid cars picking off other cars. In the case of the safety car, I can recall watching the Le Mans race. Amongst other things, the safety car had a thing for jumping on the brakes way earlier the pit lane, and I think a couple of cars checked up into that car. So you've got to treat the safety car as if there's a 5-year-old behind the wheel. And yeah, the blend line rule and the no moving under brakes rule is the same sort of thing. Especially the blend line is I've got in my head lots of F1 pit exits with another car next to them, and they come flying across and then jump on the brakes. You try that in a GT car. And assuming you get through it, you're going to end up with a very unhappy driver who's probably going to punch you off the next turn.
Absolutely.
But if you don't get that off, you're going to end up with a couple of $100,000 of Bentley, McLaren, Lamborghini, Mercedes wrapped into the nearest Umco barrier.
Yep, absolutely. And it's important you raise something like that too, because, well, I mean, it's the virtual world, and you're right, in the real life, these are expensive cars. In the virtual world, you'll end your race pretty much. So you don't want to be doing silly things like that, especially also at the very beginning of a race too. And just for one thing that Lewis did make mention to the drivers, even though there are signage items around this circuit, and you'll see them on the broadcast, you can actually see it there at the top of the timing tower where it says Sepang 2 hours. This is in fact a 90-minute event, right? So it's not a 2-hour event. Just the circuit where this was, or the mod where this was taken from, the group did a 2-hour race around here, but we're fortunately using that edition of the track, so it is a 2-hour event. We will bring you back to some live pictures on the circuit, just so you can see what's happening at the moment. Some of the drivers have elected to take to the track. Some of them, like Brenton Foley, have elected just to stay in the pits for the moment. But a little bit of last minute running around just with over a minute left in this warm-up session, and then we will be underway. Ben, what are you looking out for tonight in your travels throughout the pit lane and around this circuit?
It's probably not a good place to start, but I'm looking to see Brenton Foley make it through without falling asleep. He was given early access to the supercars meeting this morning, and even though he stayed locally, it was still a long day for him, and apparently he was pulling Kimi Raikkonen's on the way into this session, Kimi Raikkonen, Fernando Alonso is having a casual nap in the garage, which hopefully will mean that he's not going to nap in the car. Aside from that, the Beamer actually, we have to see that the Beamer do well. It's one of the oldest cars out here. I think it's still older than the Bentleys, which have been superseded. But the Z4 it's been superseded entirely as a GT spec car. But it would be good to see it out there and do well. I know, as an example, when I went to the Australian GT, I doubt it works the same way in a virtual sense. But the guys running the older spec Audi R8s were allowed to take restrictors off. So while they were still boats around corners, or not boats, but more like bricks, they had an extra 20 horsepower to play with in the straights, which balanced out nicely. So it'd be interesting to see whether the Z4 gets any of that sort of niceties. But I'm kind of keen to not see, not that we've had it, to be fair. It would be nice in a way to have a Mercedes win. But with 5 cars in the field, it feels like supercars where you've got more than half the field almost in one car, and then the rest is made up of a smattering of what else, whoever else shows up. So I personally would be keen to not see Mercedes on the podium, but that said, they have been here for a long time and not had one, so it would be only fair for them to get a win. So I'm mainly just trying to see Brenton probably make it to the end.
Well, we'll see if he can make it to the end. In real life, this circuit actually recently hosted an Asian round of the Blancpain Asia Series. And you mentioned Mercedes and 888 Race Engineering fielding a Mercedes in that particular event, and I think they actually finished, if memory serves me correctly, 3rd overall in class in their first attempt at GT in or official GT series. So good on them for jumping in there and having a go. But in the virtual world, we've got 5 Mercedes. I'm actually looking forward tonight to see if we can get another winner. We've had 4 races so far, and we've had 3 different winners and 3 different marques represented as well. And McLaren, 2 different marques, Mercedes and McLaren, have taken those wins 2 apiece. But there's a few drivers out there that we'll make mention of that in a moment that probably due for a win based on previous experience. So let's quickly roll through this field. So Lewis Wedding will start on the pole. And the last time we saw him starting on the front row, he went to victory in Barcelona, if memory serves me correctly. And he also won last time out at Sepang in that McLaren. And alongside him will be Will Devonish. So Will is one person I think is probably due for a win. He was right up there challenging with Lewis in the very, very first race at Barcelona. And he ended up disconnecting from that session, unfortunately, not long after he'd been passed by Lewis, so he was still in the hunt for that particular race and probably owed a win. Brenton Foley, the first Bentley, or the only Bentley in this race, in 3rd place for PBF Race Engineering. While he hasn't had wins under his belt, he's still had consistent finishes, and he only sees himself 7 points adrift at the top of the drivers' standings coming into tonight's race. Starting alongside him is Brendan Ross, who was the winner of the inaugural event, or the inaugural race that we've had around the Le Mans circuit, the 2 Hour of Le Mans, a month ago. Greg Nangle, the man who won Monza in that 1-lap sprint finish, he starts out of P5, alongside your pick here, or your mentioned driver here, Ben, in Ozrob for D's Nuts Racing, or DN Racing, that BMW Z4 E89. The 555 has shown glimpses of speed, but not been able to put it together consistently. The man with a point to prove after having been passed in the final few corners at the last race, Greg Turra for GTUZ, or Lone Wolf and Cubs Racing. Noah not around tonight, so only one half of the Turra family represented on track tonight. 8th place Matt Williams, the man we always refer to as the perennial place getter, not able to put it together in qualifying. Jamie Snow, the final of the FCR cars out of P9, and he's shown some glimpses of brilliance as well, doing quite well in Super 2 as well, and for the FCR stable running the Nissan. And then the last 2 cars are the Playboy Cadillacs of Glenn Miles in the green one, and Brian Walsh in the black one. They're just rounding turn 14 at the moment, and now they head down the back straight. You can see what we said earlier about the circuit being rather wide on the straight. So you can see here you could fit quite easily 4 cars wide down this straight, but then they've all got to file into one line to get through the final turn. And the lights will go out on the safety car in just a moment, and the safety car will come into pit lane, and they just need to lay off here and let the car roll in. And they said the green flag will be shown very, very shortly. So safety car is in pit lane. There's to be no passing before the start-finish line. The leader's prerogative. They all file around. And the green flag drops. And the 90 minutes of Sepang is go. And Lewis Wedding gets a very, very nice jump. And Will Devonish was a little bit asleep there. And Foley currently holds down third place. Fanning out to the inside there. Looks like it's Ozrob making a move down here on the inside of Greg Tara. Or having a look at Greg Tara. But didn't get the job done. In actual fact, Tara makes a place up on Ozrob, and Ozrob down to 7th, but it's not done yet. Ozrob down the inside through turn 3, and Matt Williams trying to go with him. So back to where they started, those two in the opening couple of corners. And up ahead, Wedding from Devonish, from Foley, and from Brennan Ross, and Angle through 5th. And was there a little bit of a touch there? Because Tara and Ozrob were very, very close, and Ozrob has to take to the gravel and now ends up behind the Cadillacs. We'll see if we can have a bit of a replay and pick up what is going on there. As our little replay, Duvalaki decides to misbehave itself. Yeah, it went for a move down the inside there. No, he just outbraked himself. He just outbraked himself, so that's all that happened there. And Ozrob now having cleared the Cadillacs. Back in there. Oh, there's a little aero fairing there. Oh, and who's that going? That's Glenn Miles just doing it all on his own in the number 69 for Playboy and Cadillac. Gets himself all out of sorts. Meanwhile, back to the front. I was just about to say, before Glenn Miles spun, there was a little aero fairing just on the edge of the circuit there, so there's been a little bit of contact. And we've got a full course caution. We've got a full course caution very, very early in the piece, and surely that's probably got to be for Glenn Miles, having that little spin and not being able to get it back on track. So that really quells any sort of racing that was going on here, because Will Devonish was lining up Lewis Wedding out of turn 14. He was very, very close, and now they've just rolled out of the throttle, and Foley was going right with him. So the top three were very, very close on that opening couple of the back end of that opening lap, and the pits are closed.
I felt like we might have missed a chance to get it, but Matt Williams had just DNF'd. I'm not sure whether that was possibly the cause of the yellow flag or what it was.
You're possibly right, actually.
He popped out of 10th place and just straight to the pits.
Well, if he's come straight into the pits, I'm not 100% sure what's happened there. There was a little aero fairing missing there on the circuit, so we might have to you might have to dive into one of the and see if you can find out what's happened there, Ben. If you can hunt down Matt Williams somewhere in the pits, that would be outstanding. But we thought it was for Glenn Miles going around at the bottom of turn number 9, which is where we picked him up, and that's where we saw that little aero fairing off the side of the circuit. A bit early for proper pit stops, but this will extend the pit window for a number of these drivers. They'll, by usual means, a 90-minute race in these GT cars with the 2 times fuel and the 2 times tyre burn and fuel burn and tyre wear ends up meaning they do stop twice, but a little bit early to stop for the very first time, but plenty of opportunity to save as much fuel as you can behind the safety car and extend your pit window. And there will be some furious recalculating of strategies. So aside from the DNF for Matt Williams, the big loser out of that start happens to be Ozrob, who outbraked himself repassing Greg Turra down into turn 4, having lost that position at the beginning of the race when the green flag dropped. And he ends up just ahead of the Cadillacs of Glenn Miles and Brian Walsh, and got it all to do. But a very, very good start for Lewis Wedding. And Will Devonish was a little bit asleep at the wheel there, but he managed to gather it back up just before the full course caution was thrown.
It's not so obvious in the context of a full pack now they're under safety car, but it looks like Jamie Snow also picked up 2 spots off the line as well within the first 2 sectors of the first lap. So he was a big improver. He was the only one, aside from Ozrob, to actually change position relative to the cars around him. I said it again, Osrob was the only person to actually lose positions off the start. Jamie was the best winner of the lot. Glenn Miles and Brian Walsh also went up a spot with Matt Williams DNF.
Absolutely. I'm just seeing if we can find Matt Williams somewhere in the pit lane, because we haven't been able to quite get a hold of him just yet. So hoping we'll be able to find a reason for his DNF.
I've just heard from him actually. Something along the lines of somebody went for an apex with a car alongside. I'm guessing that somebody turned down on Matt, and it's possibly it's dropped the aero fairing off as well as done some other damage to the car.
Oh wow! So there potentially might be a steward's inquiry there if we can find out what exactly happened. Meanwhile, Brian Walsh has decided to stop in the number 27. Now, we did say it's a bit early for pit stops, but I'm thinking maybe he's looking at just topping off the fuel here. He's got plenty of time to get back to the back of the field, and he's taking some tyres on as well. So, well, whatever floats your boat. He was at the back of the field anyway, so no issue to worry about there. Lewis just got a little bit close to that safety car as it decided to take turn number 2 and just checked up a little bit.
I'm not going to suggest it's possible that Brian Walsh has done this. He has done a lot of laps in Automobilista, but it's possible, just thinking with putting new tyres on the car, that he either has forgotten to switch that off in the pit stop menu, or he was potentially still running the tyres from qualifying without realising it, and is now having just realised it's going into a full race. So it's not going to penalise him too much because he was already down the back of the running anyway. So all he's going to do is catch the safety car again before the field goes green, and he's lost nothing and gained an extra lap or 2 in fuel and some better tyres.
Yeah, well, he's roaring down to turn 4 at the moment, Brian Walsh, and the rest of the field is actually only just coming up to turn 6 at the minute, and we're just having a little moment there going over the curb at turn 4. But he actually doesn't need to be pushing like mad to catch up to the back of this field either, because he was going to catch them rather quickly anyway. You actually hear the engines as he's coming up to them as well. So he could have afforded to just cruise up to the back of these guys. Didn't need to go like a bat out of hell and take it out of your tyres or take it out of the fuel. So he's now rejoins the back of the field. And I mean, by coming into the pit lane as well, and we haven't actually looked to see if there was any damage being repaired or not, but potentially, as you've alluded to, we're just waiting to see if Matt can shed a little bit more light on who was there and what happened. If indeed it was Brian Walsh, because we already know that Glenn Miles had spun at the back of that field, but for some reason, Brian Walsh having joined the back of the field, Glenn Miles was actually ahead of him before the stop. He stopped anyway, so the yellow obviously came out where those two gentlemen were placed at the time that it dropped, and that's where the grid order has been placed from. Safety car still on the circuit as we have a look from the cam of Lewis Wedding. You can hear him coasting and lifting and coasting in neutral, and even with the neutral with the clutch in, he's gaining on the back of the safety car. So have to be careful here, Lewis, because the safety car does go a little bit slow at some points. Safety car going in or doing another lap? Nope, we are doing another lap. But you could hear the engine on Lewis's McLaren. He was basically coasting with the clutch in to save as much fuel as possible. And even as they come past, you can literally hear the high gear that these cars are in. All about saving fuel and extending the life of those tyres and how far you can go. Most of the drivers would have broken this race up into 3 equal parts or thereabouts and probably stopped around the half-hour mark, and then with an hour to go and run to the flag. And that's the easy way to do it. At Suzuka, we'd seen the varying strategies that had made it an interesting race. Some drivers were able to extend their fuel window by 1 or 2 laps, and therefore take a little bit lesser fuel load on toward the back end for that final stint. And ultimately that's what gave Lewis the advantage, having taken a little bit lesser fuel, and was able to use the newer tyres and the lighter fuel load and really show what that McLaren can do. And he was able to reel in Tara with a lap to go and make that pass. There was 2 passing opportunities to get it done, and he thought about it at 130R and didn't get the job done. He actually thought better of it and backed out of it and stayed with him, and actually passed Tara, for those of you that didn't watch the stream, around the outside of the right-hander at the chicane. So they went through 130R. He positioned himself on the outside, which is turn 17, the right-hander, and then he was on the inside for 18, and he was able to just gently escort Greg to the point where he was going to retain that position by hook or by crook coming out of the chicane, and it was all fair, and he did a really good job, and probably one of the finest passes we've seen in GT competition to date. And not only was it a fine pass, it was a fine pass for a race win as well. Right, we're going through turn 9 up the hill, and you can see what Lewis is alluding to in the driver's briefing, that in some of the slow corners the safety car just checks up a little bit. Wondering if we're getting ready for a race resumption.
While we're heading up to the end of second 2, I've had a look through the timing. I've heard no more information from watching from Scruff. I believe he's gone straight to the race trailer to debrief. It's probably the best thing to do. He is quite emotive about his racing. But the timing split shows him as only having completed the first 2 sectors, but having specifically completed the second sector. So I believe what's possibly happened is, looking at where the cars were on track from memory when he DNF'd, or whereabouts he DNF'd, I believe that somebody's possibly turned in on him coming through this corner now. And that's possibly done the damage. The only other place that really could have happened where he could have contacted maybe a wall would be the last corner, but the cars weren't there at the time that he DNF'd. So I believe he was turned down on in either the second last or the last corners, and it caused either car contact or him having to possibly make an effort to escape that car and causing damage to himself in that manner.
Yep. Well, we're all slowing up here. There's some furious weaving going on down the straight, and the safety car peels off into the pit lane. So after 3 laps under safety car, we will get a race resumption here. And here we go, and Lewis Wedding goes, and this time Devonish is not asleep at the wheel. He decides he goes with Wedding, and having a look and just showing the nose down the inside here, but it's a bit early in the restart to be going for the pass. But he closes right up. And Foley is slightly offline at the apex for turn 1. Brendan Ross not able to effect a pass on the restart. And Angle going with them. It looks like it's all settled down, stations as they were. Jamie Snow looks like he's had a relatively good resumption of the start. He's up 3 places from where he started overall. He was ahead of Tara before the safety car came out, and Tara holding down 7th place. Osrob is in 8th, and now they're dropping the two Cadillacs rather quickly. The race resumes, and here we go. Now look at this, Devonish all over the back of Lewis Wedding here, and this is what he was possibly lining up to do before the safety car was called. And has a look down the inside here again at turn 9. Lewis left him a little bit of space there. And Wedding just didn't quite close down the gap enough, and now Devonish is up the inside here for turn 14, but he's not, sorry, not for turn 14, for turn 11, but he's not close enough. Showing the true pace of that Lamborghini. He's got some mid-corner speed and some grip. And now Foley closes up on the back of the Lamborghini. So these drivers all strong in different parts of the track, and they're all chasing each other across the road. Look at this, they're all, it's like Slipstream City, it's like Monza. They're all chasing each other, trying to get that slipstream. And now here goes Devonish. Down the inside, is he close enough alongside? Yes, he is. He worried Lewis out of it. And Wedding forced to go wide. In actual fact, lets Foley back underneath him as well, but now gets a better run at Foley off the final turn because he had the high ground. Devonish sets the quickest lap of the race there with a 2-minute .9 on race resumption. Wedding will hold off the challenge from Foley. Oh, had a little bit of a late lunge and a little bit of a late look at an open door there, did Lewis Wedding. And as they negotiate turns 1, 2 and now 3, and this lead group of cars has now become a quartet, as Brendan Ross is trying to go with the leading 3, and they've just started to drop an angle a little bit. And Devonish just got a half a second on Lewis Wedding at the moment, who's now coming under some pressure from Brenton Foley in the Bentley, and that's a little bit wide for Lewis, but he manages to sweep in, takes a late apex for 5, and on the change of direction for 6. Let's see how Will goes now that he's got some clean air. Oh, little pinch brake there heading into turn number 7. Look at this, we've got Lamborghini 1, McLaren 2, Bentley 3, and then Mercedes 4, 5 and 6. FCR Mercedes 4, 5 and 6, I should say. Will starting to check out here a little bit now and really starting to put the hammer down and get away. Loves this technical section, got the Lamborghini absolutely planted, and he's increased his margin out to 1 second. So he's found a half a second on Wedding and Foley in this little, in the second sector alone. Can Foley have a good run out of turn 14 and make a pass down at 15? And now Brendan Ross is still buying in. No, Foley tries to distract Wedding. He's awake to that. Meanwhile, the gap has just shrunk a little bit at the front, by the looks of things visually. Devonish 2-minute .3 actually takes out another 1/10 of a second. And now we've got overlap. Foley has got the inside here against Lewis Wedding. And they'll go through turn 1 side by side. So Foley has the high ground for 1. Wedding's got the high ground for turn 2. Can Foley stay with him and then get him on the inside for 3? No, he can't. Wedding shuts the door firmly. Oh, Brendan Ross had a little bit of a moment there. Got hung up on the curb at turn 3. It had a little bit of a wiggle. And Foley will now have another look at Wedding on the inside here for turn number 4. Wedding leaves him the space, and that's good racing. That's very good racing. Very fair. And all this fighting between Wedding and Foley is allowing Brendan Ross to continue to stay with them. That little mistake he had at turn 3 hasn't cost him so far yet. Foley uses a lot more of the curb, uses some grass. So too does Jamie Snow in the background, using a lot of exit curb at 6. And they're dropping the cars behind very, very quickly. So Devonish is checking out very, very quickly, putting time on the board. He found 2/10 on Wedding in that first sector alone. As they come down to the second sector split, he's found another 3/10, so really motoring away now is the Lamborghini. Wedding realises that he's got to find a way to break away from Foley here. Oh, lock up for Brendan Ross in the background, but he gets a late apex and doesn't hurt him too much. He doesn't lose any positions. But these 5 cars, Wedding, Foley, Ross, Dangle and Snow, have already starting to drop Osrob and Tara in the pursuit of Devonish. And Devonish, did he go a little bit deep? He went a little bit deep and cuts it back for a late apex, so he has lost a little bit of time. But still managed to set a new quickest lap of a 2-minute .1. The gap stable at 1.2 seconds. Having a look at the sector splits to see who is doing the best times at the moment. Overall, your best sector splits. Will Devonish 30.4 in sector 1. Purple for Lewis Wedding, sector 2 of 50.006. And then overall in sector 3, it's actually Brenton Foley with a 38.6. Oh, a little bit of smoke back there in the background. That's Foley. Foley's around. Foley went around somewhere. He's gone off of turn 4 by the look of it in his battle with Lewis Wedding. So the action will pick it up here from turn number 3. What happened here? Going for a pass down the inside. And Oh, doesn't look like there's any contact there. He looks like he just lit it up a little bit too early. And that drops him all the way back behind, even behind Greg Turra. All the way back to 8th. Hard luck for Brenton Foley.
Yeah, it looks like he's already pushing the limits of what he can do with those tyres, and he just got on the throttle too early, just trying to keep up with the much lighter, much more agile McLaren. And it's interesting that you can get a McLaren and a Bentley racing side by side, but that's the trade-off you get. The Bentley's a lot quicker in a straight line. It is a bit of a boat around the corners, as opposed to a McLaren, which is very light and very low and will grip very well, but will have issues in the straight line. And you can't out-corner a McLaren without serious commitment. And unfortunately, Brenton Foley just a little too committed there.
Yeah, just a little bit too committed and just a little bit happy on the loud pedal, as they always say. He's got it all to do. Definitely not out of this race. Still a long way to go. He's got Rob and Greg Turra in close proximity that he's got to get past, and then he's got to latch on to the back of the 3 FCR Mercedes-Benz cars that are left in this race, with the retirement of Matt Williams on lap 1, sadly. And Rob having to defend from Greg Turra here. As Turra tries to go around the outside, will he try and cut underneath on the switchback? And Rob firmly closes that door, sticks to the racing line. Foley's licking his chops, saying, well, you guys are going to continue to battle. I need to buy into this. And now Greg Turra under pressure from the Bentley Continental from Foley. Oh, and Foley had to take a little bit of evasive action there to the inside. Greg Turra has a little look on the inside of Rob, but he's not close enough to make that move stick into turn number 4. And Foley had another little moment, just another little wiggle off of the exit of turn 4. And they swing through the change of direction at turn 6. Brendan Ross and Greg Nangle very, very close together for 3rd and 4th. Interesting to see the different lines that a few drivers are taking through turns 7 and 8. Some of them opt to take the apex and clip the apexes nicely. Some of the drivers can carry a little bit more speed and stay away from the apex, but still manage to take plenty of exit curb and get a good straight line exit on the run down to turn 9. And it looks like some of these tricky corners, such as the one that we just went through at turn number 11 and down at turn 14, a lot of the drivers complaining about those sort of off camber and tricky corners to drive, and some of them look like they've managed to sort their issues there. You see Turra was a bit further away from the apex than Foley was. The kinds of troubles they had in practice were not, it doesn't look like they're quite apparent yet, but we'll like to see what happens as the race progresses. No move here from Foley on Nangle. Lighting up the timing screens was Brendan Ross, and he does set the quickest lap of the race, so getting very close to breaking the 2-minute mark. 2:0.099. Didn't purple any of the sectors on that lap, Brendan Ross, but he did set the quickest lap of the race. In actual fact, Foley's now got around the outside of Turra, and he's just committed a bit deep there into turn number 2, but had enough of a margin to make it stick. So that's one car picked off for Brenton Foley. He now sets his sights on the 555 BMW of Rob. Ben, what are you seeing out there at the moment? He's gone all quiet on me here. So he could potentially be off, or... oh, Foley kicks up a little bit of dust there. He could very well be off having a chat to some of the drivers in the pit paddock to see what's going on. And a little bit of word coming through from the pit lane now that Matt Williams has had a chance to debrief, is it was the fast left kink that they were looking at. So possibly, as Ben alluded to, it was going to be somewhere around the turn 12 area. And he was with Greg Turra, and then Brian Walsh ran into the side of me, or into the side of Matt Williams, and there's a mention here about having the reactions of a shoe, which I don't know how a shoe has reactions, but nonetheless, that probably also explains why Brian Walsh came into the pits when the safety car came out. as he would likely have had a little bit of damage there that needed some repair. Devonish now goes agonisingly close to dipping under the 2-minute mark for a race lap. And he's got a nice 2-second margin over Lewis Sweating at the moment, so hasn't been taking time out of him hand over fist in the last few laps. In actual fact, the lap time that time around, so Devonish was a full 4/10 quicker than Wedding. Overall, their best lap is only 2/10 apart. You can throw Brendan Ross and Jamie Snow all into that equation as well. Have a look at and also even Brenton Foley for his best lap. They're all very, very close. So Devonish has the best lap, a 2-minute.006. And then look at Jamie Snow, who's got a 2-minute.077. Foley, a 2-minute.092. They're very, very close together. And then you've got Brendan Ross with a 2-minute.099. And then the next man is Wedding with a 2-minute.286. So, quickest lap being exchanged between some drivers over the course of the race so far. But not separated by very much on track. The drivers all lapping at similar pace and not, taking much time out of each other, but also not gaining time over one another in huge chunks. Apart from that last tour for the man out in front in Will Devonish. Greg Tara back in 8th, keeping a watching brief on Foley, who's now gotten past, as Greg Nangle looking to put a move on Brendan Ross. He's been sizing up this move for a couple of laps now. He now picks the inside. Oh, Tara's had a big tank slapper back there, as Foley sets a new best lap of a 59.9, so takes the honour away from Devonish and drops under the 2-minute mark for the very first time. Tara couldn't get the move done around the outside of Brendan Ross for 3rd place. As they head down toward turn 4. Now that Foley has... actually, where's... Greg Tara's dropped right off the back here, so... having that tank slapper has cost him some enormous amount of time, as Foley was actually sizing up Ozrob on the run down to turn 4. It's closed right in on him here. Both these drivers dropping very, very nice lines at the moment. Foley got a little bit of mumbo, a little bit of speed under that car at the moment. And again, you can see the lines there. Ozrob taking a lot more speed through turn 8. Foley electing to stay to the racing line and take the apexes. Big hard stop for turn 9 as they head up the hill. Swinging through the top turn. Now the quick change of direction through turn 12 and 13. And now they swing on to 14. Foley locks a brake. He was carrying way too much speed in there. That might hamper his chances of having a go down into turn 14. It's a bit too far back. And Nangle sizing up Brendan Ross again. Overcommits a little bit. Both of them overcommitted in that turn, actually. Who gets the better exit out of the final turn? Can he pull off another attempt at a move here, Greg Nangle? He elects the outside again. He's not close enough to go around the outside. And Brendan Ross firmly stays on the racing line and heads off any potential move from his FCR Team Scrouse stablemate. In actual fact, Brendan Ross for FCR Motorsport, Nangle for Team Scrouse. So owned by the same team owner, just different team names. The FCR guys in the AMG and the Team Scrouse drivers in the SLS. Meanwhile, out in front, Devonish continues his march. He's got the gap out to 2.3 seconds as we tick down to the hour mark, so it means we've got a half an hour or 1/3 of the race has been completed. And we have a look to see who is where as they come down to the line at the end of the 13th lap. But this man has had it all his own way since he pulled off a very, very nice pass on Lewis Wedding just after the restart. And he's led the most laps so far. And as we said at the top of the broadcast, he's top of the race. He's probably due for a win. It was Devonish and Wedding that went toe-to-toe at Barcelona at the very, very first race of the season. And unfortunately for Will, and we'll touch wood here for him, he ended up with some internet dramas in the local Victorian. And Lewis Wedding went on to win that race by a half a minute as he extends his margin out to 2.6 seconds. So it's Will Devonish leading for Willett Race Engineering and Lamborghini from the loose SimSport McLaren driven by Lewis Wedding. And Nangle has affected the pass. So Nangle has made a pass and made it stick on Brendan Ross. So that was for P3. So the FCR Team Scrouse driver up into P3. The FCR Motorsport AMG of Brendan Ross now down into P4. Ozrob has moved up into P5. And Brendan Foley still in pursuit of him now up to P6, having started in P3. And Greg Turra in P7. And Jamie Snow has been the first man to stop, so that's why he's dropped down the timing screens, because it was he was up into 5th place originally, and we're having some issues picking up Jamie Snow on our broadcast. 9th is Glenn Miles, 10th is Brian Walsh, and the sole DNF for the moment is Matt Williams. So that's interesting to note, the first of the stoppers, and Jamie Snow on the move in the pit lane now from what we can see. So he's elected to split this race up into thirds, or pretty close into thirds. And does that trigger off any further moves in the pit lane for any of these cars, or how much fuel have these drivers been saving over the course of the safety car period and over the last few laps? Now, Will's lost quite a little bit of his advantage here. It was 2.6 seconds. It's now 1.7. So Lewis looks like he might be applying just a little bit of pressure here toward the back end of the stint. 2:0.68. And Lewis Wedding at 1:59.7. So snatches that fastest lap of the race away from Brenton Foley by 0.2 of a second, and that's why the gap got sliced down. It's a 2:0.6 for Will Devonish and a 59.7 for Wedding, so he was 0.9 of a second quicker. So Lewis has found a groove, and he's found a groove rather quickly. Ben, have you returned?
I have, yeah. I went down to the Playboy Racing Garage, and they welcomed me with open arms, which is good to see. A couple of updates on things that were sort of questioned about earlier.
Oops, sorry to cut you off, mate. Before you go too much further, we've lost. Brenton Foley's just gone around again at turn 4 as we're cycling through the field, but we've lost Greg Turra, and we're not sure why. Potentially a disconnection dilemma for him, but he becomes the second DNF for this race. And Foley in his pursuit of Oz Rob, and he's really in a bit of a way now. Coming down to turn 7, he's actually dropped quite substantially off the back of Oz Rob. So he hasn't lost a place, but he's lost quite a lot of track position. In actual fact, Oz Rob as challenging Brendan Ross, who in turn has dropped off the back of Greg Nangle, so he's made a mistake somewhere as well, Brendan Ross. I'm not too sure what's going on there. Before we come back to you, Ben, we'll just catch this leading pair, because Lewis Wedding is now eating big bites out of that Lamborghini, and into the pits comes Devonish. So we'll concedes first place and lets Lewis Wedding go. So race leader has decided enough is enough, and he comes in for his first stop, and that puts Nangle through as well. And Rob coming in, and so too Foley. Well, while the pit activity is going on, Ben, back to you.
Yeah, just looking at that for them, I think Will's pitting. I think he's just possibly hit the edge of his tyre life, and he's actually losing speed back down the track as long as he has. So good timing coming now. But yeah, speaking of pits, Glenn Miles toured the lane earlier, purely only just because he wanted some fresh rubber. Him and Brian Walsh recognised they're running sort of in a league of their own, and they're just out there to have some fun. Brian Walsh's early pit stop was actually because he collided with a almost stationary Matt Williams after his incident prior. He was just left sitting in the middle of the track, and actually the brakes were off and actually rolled backwards almost into the path of Brian Walsh, who had nowhere to go. So his pit stop was to fix damage, and while he was there, he thought he'd do the whole service. So he threw fuel in and tyres in as well, just because it wasn't going to affect him either way with pitting under a yellow. So yeah, those guys are just out there having a run. Walsh is in his very first time in a GT3 car, so yeah, they just had to put some laps down, and Walsh will be happy to be. Usually he's quicker than Glenn, so he's focused for this race is to actually at least beat Glenn.
Well, into team battle there, and that explains a little bit more of the scenario that led to the retirement of Matt Williams. So there was contact with Greg Turra, who is also now out of this race, and led to Brian Walsh being unable to react fast enough to avoid collecting Matt Williams where that took place. So now with the first few proper stops underway, Jamie Snow having triggered off the first round of stops, and then Foley, Rob and Devonish coming in on the previous lap. What does Wedding do? So Wedding sets a 2:00.0 that time around. The sector times weren't too bad. Devonish has come out in 4th. Jamie Snow has held out for 5th, and Brenton Foley rejoins in 6th. Rob in 7th. While we wait for some of these stops to take place. Now, I think there's some more pit stop activity. I can hear some pit stop activity in the background. In actual fact, it's Brendan Ross is in. So let's see where he comes out in this little battle, because he was originally up behind Nangle until he made a mistake, and then he was battling with Brenton Foley, Ozrob, not Brenton Foley. He was battling with Ozrob toward the back end of that stint, and we're interested to see where he comes out. Devonish is now coming to the line, or it's actually coming to the final corner, and Ross is still stationary in the pit lane. Lewis Wedding set the timing screens alight through Sector 1, so possibly coming in for a stop this particular lap. Brendan Ross still in the lane. Jamie Snow having a bit of a moment off the last turn. A bit of a tank slapper, and Brendan Ross in the lane now. So he's going to fall in behind his teammate by the look of it, and does. In actual fact, he's going to stay ahead of Foley. With Foley having those moments but put him behind Brendan Ross in the first place. But the field yet to be cleansed with with Nangle and Wedding still to stop. We're expecting that Lewis Wedding looks like he might be in this lap, and still setting the timing screens alight. 30.1 Sector 1, 30 and a 50.8 in Sector 2. So really wringing the neck of that McLaren on this in lap, and certainly is coming into the pit lane. He gets stopped on the marks. Stopped well before the line with the pit limit up, so no chance of a pit speeding violation, and he is in, and Nangle continues on. So Nangle able to get a bit more distance out of that Mercedes, so we'll see where he comes into play here. Now, where's Devonish in all this? He's now rounding turn number 11, so still a fair way from getting back to the start-finish line. What was his outlap like? Let's have a look to the timing screens. His outlap was a 2:59, and his first sector was a 30.3, so it was 0.2 off Lewis Wedding's time, but he went purple in sector 2 with a 50.7, and he came into the pits with just on a second lead over Lewis Wedding. Lewis is still stationary in the lane at the moment. Is Will going to get back out ahead of Wedding? He certainly is going to get back out ahead of Lewis Wedding. Lewis is on the move now. You can just see him off to the left there. In actual fact, Devonish is going to increase his margin over Lewis by a big way. And that lap for Devonish was a 59.736. So his quickest lap of the race, but not quick enough to take the fastest lap away from Wedding by 34 hundredths. But he's a big way in front of Lewis Wedding after the stops. Nangle should be in this lap. In actual fact, the sector split is 8.4 seconds. That's a huge margin, Ben. Where on earth did that happen?
That is, I think it's part of that was just smart timing with the pit stops. I'm trying to keep an eye on laps prior to coming in to see where people were at tyre life wise. That McLaren didn't look bad, but the McLaren might be more composed on used tyres than some of the other cars out here. So it's possible that it was masking a lack of speed, especially around other cars. It's not so with a lack of other cars, it's not so obvious the lack of speed. He did 203 on the way in, but that included actually stopping to get into the lane. So it's inconclusive as to what times McLaren was doing on the way in. But it's possible that he ran the McLaren a bit too long as well, actually a bit further than the Lambo was run. In terms of the Mercs, my only thought could be that because they're bigger engines, they use more fuel, but they also have to lower revs. So over a longer time, they will use a little bit less fuel. They'll be a bit more fuel efficient depending on how you drive them. Nangle possibly go for something more efficient than an outright speed-based setting, given that it is an endurance race rather than a GT sprint race.
And in actual fact, Greg Nangle's gone through. He didn't stop that last time around, so he's still got some time left in that Mercedes. In actual fact, Devonish is still going to take some chunks out of time-wise. Nangle's last lap at 2:01.9, Devonish at 2:02.3, and Wedding's out lap was a 3:07.9, and that's where the time is. Devonish's out lap, Devonish's stop, including so coming into the lane, crossing over the start-finish line, because you do before you hit the pits, stopping, taking his pit stop, and then getting out and completing the lap was a 2:59 compared to Lewis Wedding's 3-minute, or actually nearly 3-minute and 8-second lap. So obviously either some additional fuel or damage repair, or if Lewis may have overshot the box, we'll never know. And maybe we'll find out a bit later on in the evening when this race is all said and done, because that's a very big question mark as to why that stop or that and that outlap combination took so long. And is it going to cost Lewis? And Will's just got some traffic here of Brian Walsh. Now this is holding up here because Glenn Miles, sorry.
Glenn Miles.
He was on the racing line, and here's the other Cadillac in Brian Walsh ahead. So Will's caught traffic at probably what is not the best part of the circuit to do it. Walsh has the presence of mind to get out of the way and give the racing line to Devonish there, but he did get balked quite badly at the turn 9 hairpin and turn 10 change of direction, and you can see there Lewis Wedding has managed to close that gap down a little bit more now, down to 7.6 from nearly 8 or over 8 seconds. Now Nangle is in the lane at the moment as Devonish comes past, so that will cycle everybody around and cleanse the field, so we will get a very good read now on where everybody stands. And Wedding with the fastest lap, 59.5. He's really motoring now, so McLaren's starting to come into its own on this new set of tyres. Devonish's lap, a 2:04, would have been hampered by that traffic. Where does Nangle come into all of this? He comes out 5th. In actual fact, he's going to lose 5th place. He loses it to Foley, and potentially going to lose 6 to Osrob if Osrob can get up to speed and get quick enough onto the back of this onto the back of this Mercedes, I should say, not McLaren, Mercedes, and have a shot at Greg down into turn number 4 with being on the fresher tyres, but not quite up to temp and pressure yet. He manages to hold on. So Foley has managed to leapfrog Nangle after stopping earlier and recovering from 2 mistakes that he's made, both at the same turn, turn 4. It has the Bentley driver on the back foot, but the Ozrob has not given up hope here of trying to get past Nangle, but Nangle's just starting to motor away just a little bit now and just pull a couple of feet out per lap. And I think that battle probably is going to be said and done now. But now we're officially, we can say this, we're officially halfway through the season. We are halfway through this race. Being the 5th race out of 9, we are officially halfway through the GT3 World Challenge season. Local yellow flag here around the turn 14 complex, and that's Brian Walsh. So Brian Walsh is around, and we've got a full course caution. That brings out a full course caution, second full course caution. Now, did I see somebody diving into the pits there? No. I thought I'd seen someone diving into the pits. Let's see if we can pick up what happened to Brian Walsh on the replay. No, our replay is, he's just lost it off of, he lost it off of turn number 14, and that's where the problem was. He was rolling backwards onto the grass, and then he came back forwards onto the track. He should have probably just thought about better and stayed on the grass, and then we would not have probably had the caution, although somebody's knocked over the bollard at the exit of turn 15, and Brian Walsh does not have a bonnet on his car now. Now the big question, the big question is the safety car. No, the safety car did not pick up the race leader. Didn't get out. So the race leader was already through to commence lap 21 before the full course caution was called. And now that negates any advantage that Devonish had over Wedding. Ben?
Yeah, it does, yeah. The good thing in a way about Brian Walsh's spin was he was that far around the corner when it happened that Brenton Foley was the first one on the scene. Had he been a lot closer next to the corner, that could have got quite ugly with a car sitting on the racing line, but he was lucky that he was far enough through the corner that he had a chance to avoid him, even with Brenton's potentially slightly lapsed concentration based on, like I mentioned earlier. Walsh had just, I believe, come into the pits. He's lapped a couple of laps previously, was another 3-minute lap, so I believe that's the reason why he closed back up when he came out Glen Miles. It's possible that he'd adjusted himself down the grip scale as the tyres went and had not readjusted himself properly, and maybe had just gone up to his head to like a higher grip setting and tried to put the foot down out of the corner a bit early, and either got a bit early on the throttle or he's going to hit a curb, which has then sent the rear of the car into a spin, and that's what's put him into the wall. I think he only just gently kissed the wall, so he might have a bit of rear diffuser damage. I don't think wing damage is going to be an issue for him, but that front bonnet's that front end's not looking too good. So
no, certainly not.
Where he's sitting, he is now 2 laps down, actually. Where he's sitting there,
Jamie Snow's around. Sorry to cut you off, Ben. Jamie Snow's gone around under caution. He's lit it up coming out of turn number 1. That is very, very, very bizarre. He did not need to go that fast at all. And the next question is going to be, can he get back into position? And it looks like he is, because it's being held under yellow. But that was mighty, mighty odd. Here we go. And he just gave it a bootful. He just gave it an absolute bootful under caution, and be slightly red-faced and embarrassed under the bonnet, under the helmet of that driver at the moment. I would imagine that's very, very unusual.
I mean, from the race point of view, that wasn't a good move, but it was like almost perfectly executed. He managed to just grip up at the point where he was pointing where he needed to go, and it almost looked like almost like one of those sort of Jim Carner moves, just to pull off just a quick 360 in a small area, get it straight back pointing where you want to go, and off you go again like nothing ever happened. It was, from the point of view of that, it was very artistic. Although I think being on the grass probably helped him a little bit, but yeah, it doesn't help. Luckily, again, under safety car, he can get back to his spot, but that probably won't help the tyres much either.
No, certainly won't. Well, this now raises some interesting chains of thought here, because we're on 40 minutes to go now. Now, we saw the safety car come out not that long into the race. Actual fact, came out after the first lap. And we saw how far that somebody like Greg Dangle could take this car, or his Mercedes, under race conditions. He was the last of the runners to stop, and he didn't stop all that long ago. Now, if he can extend the distance of that car almost 40 minutes into a run with a local yellow flag helping his fuel cause, do you gamble? Do you come in and top off on the last lap of the safety car, get fuel, get tyres, and then run to the end? It's a dangerous gamble to make, but it's one that might very well could pay off, given that everybody is guaranteed they're going to have to stop at one more time. The question is when. This now throws up a very, very interesting strategy argument. Now, it's open to the pits are open to the lead lap cars this time around. Do we have any takers? Let's see. First four go through. Foley, Nangle. No, the only taker is Brian Walsh, and that was probably to be expected with the damage that he's carrying. But no lead lap takers this time around. Now, probably also worth pointing out, this yellow is precisely what Brenton Foley would have been hoping for as well, because after the mistakes that he'd made off of turn 4, where he'd looped it twice, this puts him right back in contention. But it's not what the race leader would have wanted. Devonish had a lovely advantage of 7.5 seconds. It had actually been eaten into a little bit by Lewis Wedding. It had come down from 8.5 to 7.5 by virtue of the fact that Lewis has now got the fastest lap of this race. But Will had quite the healthy margin, and that has now been 100% erased.
Yeah, so just in contact with Greg Turra. He actually left a message for me earlier, actually, to explain why Noah wasn't here. Noah actually broke a finger, apparently, in soccer, so that's why he's been unable to make it tonight. I imagine with the forces thrown by around some of these cars, you wouldn't be doing that with damaged appendages. So that explains why Noah's here. I haven't actually heard why he DNF'd, but I've heard the other side of the story regarding Scruff's DNF. G-Tuz, or Greg Turra, was the other party in that contact. It was down at turn 9, and he thought he'd left enough room on the inside for them to make the corner. And then, from his point of view, Scruff made contact with him. After that, they ran side by side through the quick left-hander, which I believe is just after the Sector 3 start timing split. And then I'm not sure what's happened from there, but that's possibly been what's left of the aero fairing on the track was that initial contact. And whether there's been further contact further down the line, or something has broken in the Matt Williams car at that first contact, and it's only become a bigger issue for him in the braking area into that final right-hander onto the straight.
Well, that explains a lot more. You're right, the aero fairing we had seen was on the road at turn number 9, and then obviously that's the initial contact where they've just glancing blow with each other, and then the contact was actually up here. So it's at this point here. So this is turn 12, the quick left-hander, and then obviously you've got 13 and 14 that follow. So you also just saw on the broadcast there Glenn Miles going past the field and past the safety car, and there he is down at the bottom end at turn 15. Now he's actually been given what's called the lucky dog, which is the free pass to get back onto the lead lap. So in the battle that he currently has with Brian Walsh for team honours, he's now got the upper hand here because he's got a full lap on his Playboy Racing Cadillac ATSV stablemate. So another yellow flag would then give would then put Brian Walsh on back on level terms, because then he would be the recipient of that. Now, here we go. Stops are happening. Stops are happening. Snow leads Ross, leads Foley into the pits. And also Ozrob too. So these gentlemen think they can make it from here on this final stop. And it'll be interesting to see, because this is the last lap of safety car. Usually we've got 3 laps to begin with, and we should get 3 laps again. Well, have they timed this to perfection? Or are they going to wind up short? Now, Wedding and Nangle and Devonish will all be scratching their heads now. They'll all be very, very furiously thinking about, have they made the right move by staying out? We're probably going to find out, I would dare say, in about 20 minutes time. 20 to 25 minutes time, we will find out when all the stops happen. Now, they'll be madly fuel saving. You can hear them on they're lifting and coasting. Let's go on board with Nangle. Listen to all the high gear and lift and coast. He's trying to use as little throttle as possible. Fully off throttle and coasting, and only picking up the throttle where he needs to pick it up. Now, Brian Walsh in the background here, he'll be out of position when all this goes down. So the leading 3 will have a break on the field. And Brian Walsh will probably have to get out of the way down the main straight when it all happens. So, race out of the pits. Brendan Ross has actually gotten ahead of Snow. So Snow led them in. It was Snow from Ross from Foley, and now it's Ross from Snow from Foley, and then Ozrob back there as well. Now, this is the smart thing. We saw what happened at the very, very beginning of the race when Brian Walsh came in under the safety car, and he went like a bat out of hell to catch up to the back of the field. These drivers haven't done that. These drivers have just nice and simply just driven at a reasonable pace, not used too much throttle or too much tyres or too much fuel, and they've just coasted up to the back of the field. And there wouldn't have been a lot of fuel to put in, because they would have only stopped probably within the last 15 minutes before the safety car came out. Let's return to the head of the field. So you can see here we've got Devonish from Wedding from Nangle. Then we've got the lapped runner in Brian Walsh. And then we've got Jamie Snow. Sorry, then we've got Brendan Ross, Jamie Snow, Brenton Foley, Ozrob, and Glenn Miles is now down at turn 9. And he might very well get onto the back of this pack before we go green. Where is he? He's coming through turn number 10 now. And there's the field down the main straight. So his next man is to get onto the back was Ozrob, who's just come out of 14. And yeah, Miles will go onto the back of the field with a head of steam here. I suspect we're about to go green for the resumption of this race. And we're going to have just on 31 minutes remaining, or probably about 31 minutes and change by the time we take this green flag. Through the final turn we go. Safety car peels off. Wedding is going to stick like glue to the back of this Lamborghini, who puts the hammer down. Devonish gets a break, steals a march, pulls away from the McLaren on the restart, and now Brian Walsh does a smart thing, just gets out of the way and stays off the racing line, lets the cars behind through. But it's Devonish, and now it's Wedding round the outside. He tries to make it stick. Now he needs to shut the door firmly here, does Devonish, and he does. He shuts the door very, very firmly but fairly and maintains position. So Nangle holds on to P3. Brendan Ross, Jamie Snow, Brenton Foley, Ozrob, they've all gotten through. And Glenn Miles has gotten through on his teammate as well, because he is now effectively back on the lead lap. Down to turn 4 they go. They stay as they restarted this race. And now the strategy battle plays out. Have the leading 3 made the right decision to stay out, because they're going to have to stop again. Almost guaranteed they're going to have to stop again. They need another safety car to make it from here. What about the next pair, the next trio? The next quartet, sorry. 4th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th have all stopped and very possibly, with a little bit of fuel saving, I reckon can run through to the flag.
Yeah, they're basically. I think that four are almost relying on another safety car or a chance to save fuel to make it to the end with no pit stop. So what they're in theory have done is they've set themselves up as the top four if a safety car comes out again. Otherwise, they might have to force splash and dash if not, because they run it quite close to what we assume is a half-hour length for a stint, but that did also include the pit stop. So they might just make it. Otherwise, they might have to do a splash and dash right at the end. But it's really up to when the front guys pit.
Foley sizing up a move. Sorry to cut you off, Ben. Foley sizes up a move, and he gets the job done quite easily in the end on Brendan Ross. So he's not wasting any time. Let's have a look at the lap times these guys are doing. The first flying laps are coming through at the moment. The leaders are in the 2 minute, or actually Devonish the 2-minute .9 that time around. Ross, Foley, Jamie Snow, they're all in the 2:02s and 2:03s compared to the leaders who are in the 2 minutes and the 2-minute ones. So maybe they are just fuel saving just a little bit, just to give themselves an insurance policy, because the pit stop is going to be the costly factor here. They can afford for the leading trio to get away, but not by very much. They can probably get out to I'd say about a 40-50 second lead, but then they would be nip and tuck coming into the pits. And Foley makes the next move as well, so he's got that job done on Brendan Ross quite comfortably as well. And pick that up on the replay. So that's 2 FCR Mercedes-Benz's passed in the resumption of the race, and a very, very clean pass on both occasions. So he got Jamie Snow down into turn 15, and he gets Brendan Ross on the run between turn 3 and 4. And now the next question will be does he push hard, catch up to the back of this field, or does he just control the pace and just keep it in hand? Wedding is not able to live with Devonish at the moment. Devonish is setting some good sector times and continuing to eke his advantage out. So he probably realises now that he's going to have to stop again, and the best form of defending that first place is attack. And the top three, you can see they're in front of shot. They're just strung out a little bit. So too 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th. So we've got effectively 2 battle groups here now. Rob having a look at Jamie Snow down the inside here. This is for P6. Hangs it on the inside, and they run side by side for a bit, and that's fair. So Rob leaves him plenty of space, and actually Jamie says, thank you very much. I'll definitely stay alongside you now. And they'll run side by side down to turn number 1. This will give Jamie the high ground for the right-hander at turn 1, but actually rolls out of it and lets Rob have position. So actually probably not a bad idea, given if they are trying to run to the flag here, just to roll out, lift and coast a little bit, and make sure you've got enough fuel in reserve. Devonish that time around, 1:59.8 compared to actually where's Wedding in all of this? Wedding's gone down to 6. So Wedding stopped. So Wedding is 7th, so we missed that. Wedding has decided he cannot make it, and he is in. We're wondering what happened to Lewis Wedding. We're looking at our timing screens. We didn't pay attention to the fact that he had come in and stopped. So that is very, very interesting. So he's made a green flag stop, and that surely is going to trigger this leading duo. The guys in 1st and 2nd place have to react to that from Lewis Wedding. Otherwise, they're potentially going to lose position here. Now, something's happened to Glenn Miles as well. He's actually come in and had a stop as well, because Devonish is not that far away from putting him a lap down again. Nangle looks like he might be coming in for a stop too, to potentially avoid losing touch with Wedding. And now Foley's really kicked away from Brendan Ross. And Ozrob's still got Jamie Snow for company. Foley's last lap around was a 2-minute 1.0, so he's definitely not wasting any time. Nangle goes through And so does Devonish for another lap. And a 59.8 that time around from Brenton Foley. So he's really motoring along now. Brendan Ross, Ozrob, and co. Actually, Brendan Ross didn't register a lap time that time around, so he's pinged for a track violation by the look of things. All those guys that stopped still setting, actually, times that are in the 2-minute one. Jamie Snow nearly a 2:02. Ozrob with a 2-minute 0.9. So different strategies playing out here with different lap times. Foley, you can see there, he knows, he thinks he's got a sniff of a victory here. But with a little bit of Larry driving like that, spinning up the rear wheels off some of the curbs. And good driving there from Glenn Miles to let Greg Nangle through and just giving him a flash to let him know he was clear. And now it's Foley's turn to negotiate the number 69 Playboy Racing Cadillac. And this is where Miles balked Devonish earlier in the race. And Foley's coming across him at the wrong spot as well. But Miles a little bit more astute and awake this time. Lets Foley through on the inside. And the big Bentley is motoring. And motoring up to the back of Nangle in a hurry. The 2-second gap has been really eroded rather quickly in the last lap or two. Ozrob in the background, shot right on the back of Brendan Ross now. Is he going to size up a move down into turn 15, or is he know he's a bit too far away? No, goes for a late dive and gets the job done. Parks it right on the apex and then does the right thing. Just tries to arrest the speed of Brendan Ross that time around as Foley sets the fastest lap of the race at 59.3. But he didn't do a good enough job there, did Ozrob, because Brendan Ross shoots back past down the straight. And Ozrob has another look here on the inside at turn number 1. He's going to have to really drive it hard here and really just puts a little bit of a squeeze here on Brendan Ross. And he hangs around the outside, and that's the way to do it. Hang around the outside there at turn number 2, and you're going to have a little bit of an inside move here for turn 3. And you need to make the pass stick at 4. Is he close enough, far enough alongside to make it happen? Jamie Snow's buying back into this. In actual fact, Ozrob's going to lose position to Jamie Snow. So Snow goes round the outside, but he used a lot more curb, and he couldn't quite hang with Brendan Ross there. Could Ozrob? Oh, there's contact! There's contact, and that's between Glenn Miles and Jamie and Brendan Ross by the look of things. There's been a little bit of aerofairing go missing here. Where did the contact happen? A bit of part went flying. So as Brendan Ross went through on the inside, Miles just cut back a little bit too hard there, and I think, and Jamie just shot through on the inside of the gap as the other cars went wide. And an exchange of positions between the FCR teammates. So Brendan Ross down to 5th. Jamie Snow up 5 places overall to P4. Here's the leading trio. Foley, followed by Nangle just ahead, and Devonish a bit further up the road. And Devonish is in. Devonish in the lane, so he's realised he can't make it and gets it stopped before the line. And now at the pit lane speed limit. Now, where is Lewis Wedding in all of this? Wedding is on the run down to, he's coming through turn 12 and 13 now. And his lap times have not been too bad. His last time around was a 59.9. And this is going to be very close between him and Will. Meanwhile, we'll just quickly go back to the battle. Ozrob on the back of Brendan Ross and Jamie Snow just trying to pull out the margin here. But the real battle we're interested in is Wedding v Devonish. And Devonish is still in the lane. Wedding's going to get position here. So this is a net gain for Lewis Wedding. He's put that stop to good effect. Devonish in the lane now. And that's going to be a huge margin by the time that comes out. So Wedding now on the racing line for turn 1. Devonish is only just flicking the pit lane speed limiter off now. So that almost puts pay dirt to Will Devonish having any shot of winning this race. 20 minutes to go. And it's still up for grabs, this race. Greg Nangle surely has to stop again. We know he did get a good length of running out of that Mercedes for the first stint. Has that yellow flag helped him pull off a masterstroke here, or is Foley going to be the one who can come through and can control this race? Foley's really kicked away from those FCR cars as Nangle goes a bit deep there, misses the apex on 15. Foley's really put some big margin between himself and Jamie Snow. In actual fact, that time around 59.9 for Foley, so he's consistently running in the 59s at the minute, Foley. Really applying the pressure to Nangle each and every lap. What worries me about Foley is, has he gone too hard too early? Maybe they were marginal on fuel. He's got no other choice. Maybe the strategy that these guys are playing could potentially be the right one. And they're just constantly lapping in the high 2 minute, low 2 minute 1 brackets. Are they playing themselves into contention here for a race win, if indeed Foley has gone too hard too early? Now, Wedding comes across the line. He had a 59 that time around. And actually, Devonish has had a moment off the final turn, I think, in pursuit of Wedding, because that lap was a shocker. That lap was a 2:57. And it didn't look like he got off that final turn. There was a little bit of smoke in the air. Let's just see how correct we were. Oh, yeah. Big time. Full 360 and kept going. So that's more time lost. So Will, trying to make up as much time as he possibly could, has just made his cause even worse. And he's now some 13 odd seconds, actually now 14 seconds behind Wedding after that little moment. Ben, news from the pits? Nope, off exploring at the moment. Waiting for him to return with some more information. There's our race leader. Nangle still continues to go. And Foley hasn't pegged the gap any further by the looks of things visually. Nangle the 2 minute .1 that time around. In actual fact, Foley was a little bit slower too. Then you've got the Mercedes pair of Snow and Ross, followed by Osrob behind. The strategy call is very, very interesting tonight, just to see how this is panning out and where everybody is on the track as a result of the safety car throwing up an unusual strategy call where a number of cars came in on that second lap of the safety car, not the last, which was effectively was the last full lap of safety car before going green. So the guys that came in, Brenton Foley currently second, Jamie Snow currently third, Brennan Ross currently fourth, Osrob currently fifth. They all came in together on the second lap of safety car, which was the correct lap. So they were on the back of the field before the flag went green, and it put Devonish, Wedding, and has now put Nangle under some pressure to see if they can actually make something of this. Wedding was the first of that trio to blink, and as a result, he's leapfrogged Will Devonish. And Devonish has made a further mistake after his pit stop. So Nangle, the only other man that was in that trio yet to stop for the second time. And we suspect he's going to have to stop again, but he did make that Mercedes go rather long on its tank, and he was the very last man to take to the pits for the first occasion. He's got 15 more minutes. I still think he's going to need a splash and dash. And then I'm worried about Foley, whether or not he's done the right thing. He's actually eaten some time out of Nangle that time around at 59.7 to Nangle's 2:05. They run lap 33, or commence lap 33. Our original prediction was we were going to get around 43 to 46 laps. And judging by the time that we have left on the clock, we're probably going to fall short of that at the rate that we are tracking. We're probably going to get another 8 laps in this one. That'll get us up to lap 41, so we'll be a little bit short of our original prediction, which was based on the green flag running. But still, going to set up an exciting finish. Foley now under a second behind Nangle. So he's finding pace. And behind them, Jamie Snow still heads. Ozrob's managed to find his way past Brendan Ross. So he's now managed to split this pair of Mercedes AMG cars as Ozrob. And this battle for the final step on the podium not over and done with. Well, battle for the race lead not over and done with either. It would not surprise me if this trio here on screen become second, third and fourth on the road in the next little bit. As Foley's right on the back of Nangle now, down the back straight, heading towards the final turn. Nangle defends, makes one move under the braking zone, and that's fair. But he's still going. Foley's all over the back of him at the moment, eating big chunks out. Nangle with a 2:05 that time around. What did Foley do in his hot pursuit? He did a 59.5, 2/10 off his best. Down the inside, here goes Foley. Down to turn number 1. Very, very easy pass. Job done. Moves up into P1. So the Bentley leads for the first time, and he leads with 12 minutes and 55 seconds remaining. He takes the lead at. Can he get home from here? That is the big question. Now, what does he do? Does he just control the pace and try and get it to the flag? Or does he continue to push? And does he try and break the back of Greg Nangle? It's now with 12.5 minutes on the clock. Benny, you with me? No. Still off finding out what's going on in the world in the pit lane. Back to the battle for third, or the current, what is the battle for the final step on the podium at the moment. Snow's just picked up the pace a little bit now, so maybe he's good with fuel. He's just starting to eke away from Ozrob and Brendan Ross. The gap between Wedding and Devonish has not changed very much. It's sitting at 14 seconds at the moment, or thereabouts. So we'll definitely out of this one. They made their bed very, very early in that safety car, second safety car period. They were very well caught out by Foley, Snow, Ozrob and Brendan Ross. I think we might have Ben now.
Yeah, just went back to chat with the Playboy Racing guys some more. The big news out of that discussion was...
Oh, sorry, Ben, before we go too much further, Ozrob's made the move, and there's been contact at the final corner, and Jamie Snow has just given Ozrob a bit of a serve. There was it was a very, very, very late lunge from Ozrob, and I don't think Jamie was expecting him to be there, but he parked it so hard on the apex of the corner that Jamie had no alternative but to run to the back of him. Now Ozrob goes again. This time Ozrob makes the move stick, so he's now up into net P3. Can he hold off? The Mercedes down this run between turns 3 and 4. Or is Jamie going to have him back around the outside? Jamie tries to run with him. This is a very, very good dice here, but now Jamie's got the inside run for turn 5. Rob didn't defend well enough there, and he's left the door well open here for Brendan Ross to sneak up the inside as well, but he didn't quite get close enough to make it stick. And Ozrob has the line for the change of direction. And they're back to where they were. Sorry, Ben, back to you.
That's right. I was saying, speaking of doing a sneaky before I go any further, I think Foley's just got it past Nangle as well.
He certainly has. He certainly has. He's got it done somewhere. And just looking back on our replay, and no, he's actually got it done well and truly somewhere before turn number 6 and 7 and 8. So he is now up into the net lead. Oh, he was actually into the net lead of this race. Sorry, you actually just thinking back before that, he actually got it done a little bit earlier in the piece. It looks like he's made a repass at some point as well.
Yeah, so the big thing out of Glenn Miles there was that contact he made with one of the FCR cars was not intentional. He suffered snap oversteer at the worst possible time while he was being lapped by the lead cars. So that was not a case of losing in the mirrors or a bit of careless driving. That was simply the car. I think it was just the left, right, and the rear wanted to go a bit more to the left some more, and he's from the direct quote, more or less, was the wheels wrenched out of his hands, so the car wanted to go left, and unfortunately there was an FCR car there, so that was what caused the contact between those two.
Speaking of the Playboy Racing cars, is Brian Walsh just into the pits in the back of shot. Now Ozrob's having to defend here. Oh, and that's a little bit of an unusual defence. He got a bit crossed up there and got himself on the grass and the curb at turn 1, because Brendan Ross is really giving Ozrob what for at the moment, and looking to pass a move round the outside for turn number 3, and then line himself up for a run into turn number 4, and that's very, very, very nicely done for Brendan Ross. That's a wonderful pass. But he carries a bit too much speed into turn 4 and uses all of the apex and some, but still manages to retain the place. So that puts him into what currently is P4 with just over 8 minutes to go. And Foley leads from Nangle. Nangle doing a really good job to hang in for this long on this fuel load as they round what is currently turn number 11, and we're getting about 7 minutes left in this race, or 7 and a bit minutes left in this race to go. And it looks set like we're going to have about another 4 laps remaining. We've got to, as you know, in this endurance season, it is time certain plus 1 lap. So they'll come to the line here with about, we're doing our math as they come along, and they will have about another 12 seconds or so to add to the time. So it will be 4 laps remaining. We're told 4 laps officially remaining with the current time. So they're on lap 37. So this will be a 41 lap race by the time we get to the flag. I'm reading into I'm just redoing math again. Potentially we're going to get one more, because we're going to get. We'll get another lap. We'll get actually we'll get 42. Sorry, looks like it'll be 42 because it's time plus 1 lap. So time will expire when they are on their 4th lap, and they will get to the line, and then they will have one more to go. So 42 laps. I apologise. 42 laps looks like it's set to be the distance, unless of course the inevitable happens, and we end up with a full course caution, which will effectively nullify the field and just about end this race.
Yeah. No, I've it's been in the background and I haven't actually thought about it, but Nangles still hasn't pitted yet. He was one of the front 3. And he's still putting down decent laps, so his tyres aren't completely butchered either. I have a feeling he might at this stage, unless he's going to dive in the next couple laps, he might actually make it to the end, which means that we don't actually have a readily available who pitted when sheet within our timing software. I think, not knowing any better, Nangle pitted a lot later than the other 2.
He did,
and that'll be what's holding him out. Then that'll be why he's still managed to stay out there, where the other 2 have had to dive in.
Yeah, he did. He was the very last man to stop out of all the drivers on the very first occasion, and he got probably to about the 40-minute mark, I believe, or somewhere between the 35 and 40-minute mark before he actually came in for the stop, that was also with a 3-lap safety car run as well. The safety car didn't actually came out not that long after he'd been in for his first and only stop. So taking that into consideration, if he does have to stop again, it's only going to be with a very, very short amount of time on the clock. But he really needs to be in a position where he can be just saving fuel at the moment. Foley has now dropped back into the low 2-minute mark. Nangle's now doing, the last lap around was a high 2 minutes, so very close to a 2-minute 1. I'm wondering whether or not these drivers have gone into conservation mode with not that long left. The big question is, has Greg got enough to go to the finish? Because Wedding bailed, Devonish bailed. They stopped a lot earlier than Greg did. And we just keep wondering, normally under full green flag racing conditions, it's a 2-stop race. Even with one yellow flag, it's a 2-stop race in a 90-minute endurance race. That's the way that this series has been set up. But with 2 yellow flags and a bit of fuel saving, if the strategy falls the right way, we could be staring at Greg Nangle potentially getting past Foley, because Foley has gone quite hard. He went quite hard to get away from Snow, Ross and Osrob, because they all came in together. And now that Foley's out front, I'm just wondering whether or not he's done enough to stay ahead once this is all said and done. Meanwhile, we'll go back to the battle for third place. This might very well have been decided, because Jamie Snow has well and truly kicked away from Brennan Rossi. He's got just over a second on his FCR Motorsports stablemate. Osrob's still continuing to harass Brennan Ross as best he can, but still not far enough. It's still a bit too far behind to make any serious challenges at the moment, but coming down to 3 minutes remaining, if he's going to make a challenge for the podium, he's got to do it soon. Where's Wedding at the moment? Because Wedding's been turning some relatively good lap times consistently in the 59, in the high 59s and low minute 2s. Unfortunately for him, he was the first to blink, and he's got that margin on Will out to a really big lead now, so Will's probably made a further mistake somewhere. In actual fact, Lewis didn't register a time that time around, so been pinked for a track violation, I would dare say, in the final sector. Who's that that stopped? Nangle stopped! Nangle has stopped, so Nangle could not make it. He's just fed in back behind Lewis Wedding, so we missed that while we were cycling back through the field to see where Lewis was, and he's come in and unfortunately will not feature on the podium at this point in time. Now the big question is, what about Foley? What about Jamie Snow? What about Brennan Ross? What about Osrob? Do they need to stop again? Well, Foley's just flicked on the little switch that registers that you might need to come in for a stop, because you can see the spanner in the cog just above the number 1 on the timing just there. Has Foley did Foley shoot his bolt too early by going too hard? And does he have to stop again? It'd be heartbreaking if he does, because there's going to be 2 laps remaining with him being the race leader. And he's coming in, so he couldn't make it. Heartbreak for Brenton Foley. He's going to have to come in for a splash and dash. And that puts Jamie Snow into what is effectively the race lead, or will be the race lead when he comes around. So Osrob is now battling Brendan Ross for second place on the podium. So these guys look like they might have... No, Osrob's in! Osrob's in, so he couldn't make it either. Oh, late drama in the 90 minutes of Sepang. Snow goes through for FCR Motorsport. Brenton Ross will take second. Foley is in the lane, so he'll stay third by the looks of things. And he does. Osrob is fourth. Lewis Wedding is fifth. So Foley's going to possibly come out of this with a podium. Well, it looks like we're going to get another race winner potentially. Jamie Snow's got a lap and 3/4 to go. And this is high drama late in the 90 minutes of Sepang. A fuel race finish. And Jamie's running quite slowly at the minute, I would imagine. His first sector was a 31.0, so that's definitely not racing speed.
I was going to say, I think what we're seeing here, we did talk very earlier about how the Mercs were putting another lap or two down on fuel. I think what's happened is they've pitted at the same time as the Bentley and as the Beamer, but that extra lap or so in fuel they've got might just be enough. But it's not an extra lap because they have to do this lap and then a lap past that.
And one more.
So that was why Snow is probably backing off quite heavily. He's got to make another lap from here. Otherwise, Snow will be in, and by that logic, Ross will also be in, and that will hand it back to Brenton Foley.
Well, potentially right. Foley really going to have to get a motor on here just in case these guys cough and splutter their way to the finish. A 52.1 for Jamie Snow in that second sector and a 51.9 for Brendan Ross. Let's see what lap times they're doing. The flag, the white flag is at the ready. There's Foley in the back of shot. Can he mow these two FCR cars down if they strike fuel trouble? Foley went really hard, really early off the restart. White flag is in the air. 1 to go. Jamie Snow with a 2-minute 3. Brendan Ross with a 2-minute 1.8. So they are fuel saving. Got to be fuel saving. Foley's got nothing to lose. He's got a 3rd place in his pocket at the moment. Wedding's going to get 4th. Nangle is currently... actually, where's Osrob? Osrob has passed Greg Nangle. So Osrob is 5th. What's happened to Nangle? He's running a bit slowly, and Devonish is going to be 7th overall at the moment. Back to the race-leading pair. Brendan Ross closing in on the back of Jamie Snow here. So it's only 0.8 of a second. Are we going to get another race winner? Or are we going to have a repeat winner in Brendan Ross?
Just thinking with Nangle's stop, it's possible that even if he did tyres in that stop, he's now assuming he didn't do tyres in the latest stop, he's running on tyres that he's had 40 minutes worth of tyres or so, and that's possibly why he's now slowed down. He might have hit the edge of his tyres, but he's still got a full fuel load, which is probably the worst condition to have with very poorly tyres.
You're possibly right. The splash and dash will have cost him. In actual fact, where's Foley? Foley's gone off the road. Foley's gone off the road. He's handed 3rd place to Lewis Wedding. Have we got some replay footage of this? It looks like we do. Yeah, he's gone. He went off the edge of turn number 8 and hit the wall. So Foley out of 3rd place. So the drama continues. Now Jamie Snow's under pressure from Brendan Ross. It's 0.6 of a second. This is going to be a grandstand finish under fuel-saving conditions. Will we get a repeat winner? Will we get a new winner? Jamie Snow round the final corner, and I was right. We're going to get 41 laps. He's gone deep, but is Brendan Ross going to come through and take the checkered flag? No, he's going to let Jamie Snow finish. It's a formation finish for FCR Motorsport, 1-2. Jamie ran deep at the final corner, and I thought that Brendan Ross was going to have him, but he had decided, no, I'm going to let you have the victory. Wedding will come to the line and take 3rd place. So he gets a podium after being the first man to blink in the race of the fuel strategy. Probably not the way he wanted to end it. Foley, you're right, probably would have done the same thing Nangle did. Came in, splash and dash, fuel only, no tyres, and it cost him in 3rd place in the end. He finishes 4th. Osrob comes through to finish 5th, having passed Nangle for 6th, and Will Devonish, out of all of that, ends up in 7th place. So what was the race leader at the restart ends up at the back of the finishers on the lead lap. Glenn Miles will finish in 8th. Brian Walsh will be the last of the classified finishers in 9th, with Turra and Williams not finishing this race. In actual fact, I think Osrob's out of fuel, and Nangle, I think, is done as well.
Yeah, just looking at Nangle's last lap, that was a 2:08, so that was a huge conservation lap for him. It was just, if we gone a lap longer or something, Will would have got him, because Will put down a 2-minute nearly 2 minute flat in that last sector. So he was gaining hand over fist on Nangle. Nangle just had enough of a gap over him at the end there that he just managed to sneak sixth.
Well, he did. Glenn Miles comes down to checkered flag, 1 lap down, finishes in 8th place. Brian Walsh will be 2 laps down, and he will finish 9th with no bonnet. And good to see him in his first race. At least he gets to the flag, and a double finish for Playboy Racing and Cadillac. But take nothing away from the race winner, Jamie Snow. He made that little mistake just at the end there, and I thought that we were going to end up in a situation where Brendan Ross was going to come through and take that victory away from him, but ultimately he decided, I'm going to let my teammate have the honours, and have the honours he did. So we get a 4th winner in this series in 5 races. So a very, very good spread of winners, and a good mix-up of the field as well, in what can only be described as a very, very interesting race, which Fuel Strategy ultimately decided. Well, we're going to run through with our top 3, and changed hands quite rapidly in those closing laps. But firstly, to the victor go the spoils. Jamie Snow. Jamie, your first win in GT3 World Challenge competition, but a little mistake, just running a bit wide there at the last corner, but your teammate let you have it. Congratulations.
Yeah, we were a little bit too busy sort of celebrating. We planned to do a formation finish like we did at Le Mans, and I was sort of watching where he was and everything like that, and not paying too much attention to the road. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, you know, happy with my race. I mean, clearly I wasn't the fastest car tonight, nowhere near it. Hadn't done any practice before today. I've just been a little bit too busy with real life things. So I came in, the team helped me out with a setup, and I basically just learnt the track in free practice. Well,
you did really, really well to learn the track in free practice and bring home the win. But it was a fuel mileage race at the end of the day. Yourself and Brendan Ross, Osrob and Foley, you all decided to take the gamble and come in under the second safety car, probably at what would have been the right lap to do it, to get back onto the back of the train. I would imagine it would have been on fumes at the end.
Yeah, 3 litres left when I passed the finish line.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We're absolutely right. And by the way you gentlemen were driving, especially in the early part of that third stint after the second safety car, and right at the end there as well, you had to fuel save. You fuel saved early, but then you had to fuel save at the end as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was tossing and turning between whether I was safe or not the whole time. So, you know, saved for a little bit, and I saw Rob coming, but I was pretty sure that he was going to have to pit again. But I thought, you know, I just want to push a little bit just to make sure that I keep the gap there. And then towards the end, I started sort of second guessing myself and just thought I'd save a little bit again. But no, it just worked out perfect. Just goes to show you don't have to be the fastest car on the track to win races in these long endurance races.
No, certainly right. And that is the ultimate story at the end of the day. You made it on one stop, and it's purely and simply a strategy play. Job well done. And to your FCR teammate, Brendan Ross. Brendan, you another podium, and goes with your Le Mans victory. So congratulations on P2.
Thank you. It's sort of stacking up to a pretty good season for myself. So quite happy with how it's all going. Yeah. Especially probably not being the fastest car at all, but just sort of being consistent. It's probably helping me there.
That's it. And when you were joint leader at the top of the standings with Lewis Wedding coming into tonight. Obviously, Lewis had the high ground by virtue of the 2 victories to your 1. But you are right. It's simply the case of being there to finish the race and to continue to collect the points. And we've seen that at a number of series that not only you've driven in, but a number of the other drivers that just, even if they have little minor issues, they continue to rack up some points, and ultimately it leads towards a good result at the end of the day. You've only got the 1 win and the podium finish tonight to go with it as well. But you are racking up a good haul of points by continuing to finish races.
Yes, it's just making the most of your bad days. Just sort of mimicking what Jamie said. Our car probably wasn't it wasn't the fastest on the day, but it was fast enough to just sort of pit at the right time to get us in the position we were.
Absolutely right. Well, congratulations on P2. And now we turn our attention to Lewis Wedding, who came through at the end of the day to pick up P3 when Brenton Foley made a mistake on that final lap. Lewis, you were the first man to blink under the after the second safety car restart. The guys ahead of you that finished ahead of you came in under that second safety car, and you probably had to recalculate your strategy rather quickly, I would imagine, because you maybe it looked like you guys might have been a bit caught out by them.
No, not necessarily. I was expecting a couple of people to pit under that last safety car, but I knew in my car there was absolutely no way I could pit under the safety car at the end there and expect to make it to the end. I would have needed to massively fuel save, which would have lost me the race anyway. To obviously those guys, and then I couldn't pit the lap after the safety car either, so I pitted at the earliest point that I could at the end. To be fair, I think I got the strategy, even looking back now, I got the strategy on my end as good as I could have got it. I drove the wheels off that thing. The McLaren isn't the greatest around that track. There was a couple of corners that was okay, but there's a lot of corners where you need acceleration. It just didn't have it, so drove the wheels off it. The only really minor mistake I made was on the pit entry, and I think I did request that the first pit stop, my pit crew come out, and they did, and then just as I was entering the pits, they went away. So that's why I dropped back, I think, 10 seconds behind Will after the first stop. My pit stop was a bit long, but in the end, it didn't hurt me too much because of the safety car later on. But yeah.
Yeah, that does explain a fair bit, because we were in the box here, we were kind of scratching our heads as to what had happened when you did come in for that stop, because it was quite unusual that you came out such a long way behind Will at that particular stop, and you took a lot longer. So we were wondering whether or not you'd overshot your pit box, or you had damage to repair, or something along those lines, but you just explained it for us. Yeah,
I didn't have any damage or anything like that. Didn't had to add any fuel or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure Will would have changed tyres, especially at the rate I was catching him towards the end of that first stint. So I don't think it was that. It was just, the pit crew just went away right as I was entering the pit lane. And instead of it being, I think normally it's like a 44-second pit stop, was like 53. So that dropped me back in the end. Didn't cost me any time due to the safety car later on. And then even then, like, I felt I was in a really good rhythm when that second safety car came out in that middle stint. I was catching Will at a fair rate of knots, and the guys behind weren't really troubling. And then, that safety car it just chucked up a joker card, and I dealt with the best I could. But the poor old McLaren just wasn't quite the car to be in today, I don't think, with that coming out.
No, it doesn't. Well, you had a good opening sparring with Will Devonish in that right up until the very first safety car, and then he sort of kicked away from you after that. But you're right, I think that Lamborghini was probably in a league of its own tonight, but the safety cars just fell at the times that you didn't want it to occur tonight.
Yeah, I think it was probably the Lamborghini probably just had a little bit of an edge, like especially early on in the stint. But once, as the stint went on, especially in that first stint anyway, he sort of obviously got past me and sort of broke away just a little bit. But then as the stint went on, I was able to start maintaining. And then right at the end, I think his rear tyres were not in the best shape, and I was able to close that gap right up again. And I thought with my in-lap and everything, I'd absolutely nailed the pit entry. I thought I was going to jump him, but didn't quite happen. But yeah, very, very close. And then again, obviously had the Mercedes, and Foley was pretty quick as well before he I think he hit the curb, if I had to hazard a guess, at turn 3 when we were battling. So yeah, there's a few quick cars out there, and pretty fun race in the end.
It certainly was. And we now look forward to our first venture under lights, so it's actually going to be a twilight race coming up in 2 weeks' time on the 28th of April, which will be the 2 hours of Abu Dhabi. So a number of the drivers, I think, very much looking forward to a nice GT endurance race, something a little bit different compared to what we've done in the past. So Ben, back to you for this one. an interesting strategy call race in this particular instance. We've seen in endurance racing, we've seen good dogfights, we've seen one-lap sprint finishes this season. Now we've seen a fuel mileage race. Can it get any better from here?
There's definitely a possibility for it too. We've seen a whole range of variables come into affect the finish, and there's chances for them to overlap. There's chances for additionally to come in. I mean, we haven't necessarily seen a race purely on tyres yet, which can be entirely a thing with depending how long you want to run your tyres. As we have seen, tyres did have an impact in today's race combined with fuel. So we might potentially have a race purely on tyres, which is, I suppose, a bit of an F1 thing in a way, but there's potential for that to be a thing down the line as well.
Certainly is. Before we leave tonight, some provisional point standings after the first 5 rounds. So by virtue of his second place position tonight, that puts Brendan Ross into outright leader for the GT3 World Challenge Championship. He sits on 88 points. Lewis Wedding, 79, up in second place. Brenton Foley moves up to third place with 69. Greg Nangle, 59 in fourth. And Jamie Snow, with his victory tonight, brings him up into P5 and pushes Ozrob down to P6 with 53 points. So still plenty of racing to go. And don't forget the 2-hour events that occur on the third, the 6th and the 9th races, and next round being the 6th race, which is classed as a feature round, the slightly more elevated points. So instead of 25 points for a win, it's 30 points for a 2-hour race. So until we see you in approximately 2 weeks, this has been the 90 minutes of Sepang, and thank you very much indeed, everybody, for watching. And as always, please drive safely and have a very happy Easter. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.